It doesn't matter if you consider yourself to be the greatest anime connoisseur or someone who hates anime altogether. The prospect of watching an anime doesn't necessarily always seem appealing. Maybe there are reoccurring tropes that annoy you. Maybe you feel like you've already watched everything good out there. Or maybe you're just on the lookout for something a little bit different. Well, to anyone who feels this way, this video is for you. Here are 5 anime you should watch if you are currently, or in general, convinced that all anime are the same. Or in other words, here are 5 anime for people who don't like anime. 91 Days is a story taking place in the United States during the Prohibition era. Several mafia families control the city, who will stop at nothing to preserve their influence over the illegal alcohol market. One unfortunate individual who got caught up in the crossfire of mafia disputes is Angelo Lagusa. Angelo witnessed his entire family being massacred by the powerful Vanetti family when he was just a child. Years later, now a grown man but full of hatred and grief, he decides to go on a quest for vengeance after receiving a mysterious letter. The Vanetti family, being as powerful as it is, cannot be taken down via brute force, but Angelo's strength lies within his cunningness, wit, and calculative nature. Keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. Like a parasite, Angelo gradually worms himself into the enemy's ranks, only waiting for his opportunity to make them all pay. What originally seemed like an unspectacular revenge plot would soon develop into one of the most nail-biting and intense anime I've ever seen. The show is also very good at using uncertainty and playing with the viewer's expectations. Angelo is infiltrating the enemy's lines. He is sleeping and eating under the same roof as the people that took everything from him. He is bantering with them. He fights alongside them. Hell, he finds out that some of them might even have redeeming qualities. You are constantly wondering how far Angelo is willing to go to satisfy his hunger for redemption. The last episode is a beautiful finale to everything that has happened. And even though there were quite a few things left ambiguous, I think the story made its point very clear and left me 100% satisfied. The show is only a little over 4 hours long, and that is really all it needs to tell a great story. 91 Days also has a really good English dub, with characters that actually sound like real human beings. So if you're sick and tired of 3-foot-tall anime girls screaming Oni-chan in your ears, then here you go, 91 Days got you covered. Redline is all about speed. There is this huge race called, well, Redline. It takes place every 5 years and only the best of the best racers even have a chance to take part in it. One of them being Daredevil JP, our main character, who has by the way the coolest hairstyle I've ever seen. JP has to face off against the numerous people and organizations who also want a piece of the big cake that is Redline. Bounty hunters, criminal syndicates, practically everyone looks to turn the biggest race of the underworld to their advantage. Oh, and did I mention that there are absolutely no rules whatsoever? Some challengers will bombard their opponents with missiles or use other wacky tactics to squeeze out an advantage. Doesn't matter, only thing that matters is winning. There are some subtleties about Redline, like the distinct and unique world building, but do not worry, I won't bore you with that, because overall Redline is about as subtle as a monster truck in a library. Every race is fast and exhilarating. No, calling it fast is an absolute understatement. The quote-unquote normal speed at which these vehicles operate is probably already like 200 miles an hour. But whenever things get serious, then... I don't even know how to describe what you're seeing on screen right now. When stuff gets real, it's a mind-boggling, almost like a reality-warping type of experience. It's truly a testament to the sheer amount of passion and talent that went into this project. When you see depictions of speed that go so far beyond anything our mind is familiar with, but every implication of movement just translates perfectly. You can actually feel it in your bones. Man, watching this in cinemas would have been nuts. Despite being released over 12 years ago, Redline is a movie that still, to this day, demonstrates the potential of animated media. Even if you don't factor in the insane action sequences, Redline has a vibrant energy in its art that most anime can only dream of. Combine that with cool characters, good voice acting and an interesting setting, boom, Redline has got your back. Don't you sometimes just hope that something interesting happens? Something that takes you out of your mundane daily life and gives you a sense of excitement? Anything. Well, be careful what you wish for, I guess. Because that is exactly what happened to our average Japanese office worker, Rokuro Okajima. Through a series of rather unexpected events, he ends up being held ransom by a group of outlaws, who operate under the name the Lagoon Company. And after another series of unexpected events, he ends up becoming part of that very same crew. The show focuses on Rock trying to find his way as an average Joe amongst gangsters, murderers and crazy people. A lot of them. The show builds on some tropes, but they are more reminiscent of classic gangster and action movies rather than anything anime related. There's a lot of shooting, violence, shooting, badass people doing badass things, but also shooting and over-the-topness, oftentimes involving shooting, you get the idea. My favorite part of the show, however, is seeing the different characters all having their own way of dealing with the violent nature of the world they live in, and also seeing their different ideologies collide. Rock, for example, has a very strong moral code and believes that killing should be refrained from as much as possible. He also tries to see the good in people and always believes there is a diplomatic way of solving a conflict. Crew member Revi, in contrast, is a lot more, well, trigger happy, and oftentimes seems to have more of a brute force approach. However, her way of doing things is also based on decades of experiences of fighting her way through. And if it wasn't for her being as skilled as she is, both Rock and Revi would have probably been long dead by now. Both point of views are valid depending on the context. There isn't really an inherently better way of dealing with the pretty messed up world of Black Lagoon. Rock soon has to realize that although his ideals might sound pretty in theory, reality unfortunately doesn't give a shit about your moral codes and it will put you in situations where there simply isn't an ethically correct way of doing things. Revi, on the other hand, has to gradually come to terms with the fact that, although Rock may not exactly be a powerhouse, there might still be a value to him that shouldn't be underestimated. Characters don't just throw their entire personality overboard, but you can see that the various incidents have a lasting impact on them, which is cool. While the gunfights and whatnot were fun and all, I think the clever dialogues and different perspectives of each character are why the show is able to separate itself from just another mindless action spectacle. Also, the English voice acting is once again pretty damn good. In terms of art style, it's immediately clear that Monster is not planning to lure you in with fancy colors or big anime eyes. It is dark, gritty, and gloomy. The story begins with a talented doctor saving a young boy's life. Hey, that sounds great, right? Well, except that boy unfortunately turns out to become a criminal mastermind, responsible for the death of countless people. Monster is not an easy anime. It can be distressing and exhausting to watch. It can be demanding and hard to understand. But I think that is also the beauty of it. I believe that if you want to get the most out of the show, you really need a willingness to engage in it. What is the difference between a victim of circumstances and an inherently evil perpetrator? Is it justified to kill a murderer if that murderer will continue to claim lives unless you stop him? This is only scratching the surface of the subjects Monster deals with. It's a show that tackles various philosophical topics, but it never feeds you an easy answer. Although it's a great story, Monster is not an anime I can recommend to everyone. Just watching it can feel taxing. If you just want to have some quick fun, then Monster is definitely not what you're looking for. But if you got a little more time and patience on your hands, then, well, see for yourself. Although Monster can be quite tough, I think once you get through to it, it's incredibly rewarding. Possibly Monster's greatest strength is its characters. Every character has their own set of distinct values and beliefs. The various characters are embodiments of what humans fear, but also should strive for, and sometimes both. Monster is a deeply unsettling anime, but never without purpose. At the very least, I can say that I absolutely do not regret watching it. Spaceships, bounty hunters, and jazz music. Welcome to the world of Cowboy Bebop. An anime about a bunch of rather eccentric individuals cruising through the galaxy while constantly being on the lookout for the next job. Every mission takes us on a journey through the incredibly stylish setting, while also gradually uncovering the secrets of our main protagonists. Every character has a specific role as a crew member, without ever coming across as shallow or one-dimensional. Bebop's characters are equally dorky and fun, but also relatable and compelling. Cowboy Bebop is a very character-driven story, and in many ways they are the reason why the show stood the test of time. Sometimes you just feel a little lost together with the characters. Taking place in 2071, Cowboy Bebop's world is quite a bit more advanced, but it seems like those technological advancements weren't enough to save humanity from many of today's struggles. Sometimes people are just floating around without any clear goal or objective, just like a spaceship in an endless sea of stars. The characters of Cowboy Bebop are all just kind of figuring out what to do, which is a struggle I found all too relatable. They are all people with widely different experiences, but instead of those experiences shaping a pathway of where to go now, it seems like their past brought up more questions than answers. But before I make Cowboy Bebop sound depressing and possibly off-putting, I should mention there is also an episode, for example, where our main character Spike eats a rather mischievous mushroom. For every fun and quirky moment of Bebop, there's also a moment of lostness and loneliness. Well, and vice versa. It's a story that simply isn't comfortable being labeled as one thing and one thing only. Oh, and there's also a heavy influence of jazz. Don't question it for now, you will get it soon enough. Cowboy Bebop is a show that I think anyone can watch. Doesn't matter if you watched 0, 5 or 500 anime. It's a timeless classic that everyone should watch at least once. Well then, that is the end of my list, but for anyone who is willing to stick around just a bit longer, here are some honorable mentions. Samurai Champloo is a story about 3 loners going on a journey through Japan together during the Edo period. It's an anime with a vibe unlike any other. There is an overarching plot, but that is not the focus. The focus is on the moment, the journey itself, exploring new places, meeting new people. But the show is also very episodic. We go to new places, but eventually we have to leave. And we meet new people, but we also say goodbye to them. But that is okay, because the memories remain and the next adventure is sure to come. From this guy being accompanied by a beatboxer, to Mugen using windmills while attacking, there is a strong influence of hip-hop that is weirdly enough extremely fitting. Not to mention the show has a legendary soundtrack that fuels into giving it such a unique atmosphere. The reason why Samurai Champloo is only a honorable mention is because in terms of an episodic story focusing on a bunch of misfits going on a journey, with a big emphasis on a specific music genre, well, there's already Cowboy Bebop on the list, but obviously that doesn't mean Champloo isn't worth watching anyway. Another anime I wanted to shout out is the movie Perfect Blue. We all wear masks. The way you talk to your coworker is probably different than the way you talk to your friends. In front of your friends, you probably behave differently than in front of relatives or family. And there's probably another side of you that you only begin to express once you're all by yourself. We all wear masks. And in itself, that isn't necessarily a problem. Well, that is until you start to lose track of the real you. When the persona, the mask you hold up in front of other people, defines you. Or even becomes you. Or maybe the quote-unquote real you has never existed in the first place. I think Perfect Blue can be best described as a psychological horror story. Directed by Satoshi Kon, Perfect Blue portrays a kind of horror that you rarely see in popular Western media at least. Although there are dangerous people in Perfect Blue, the real horror of the story isn't a psychotic serial killer, nor an extraterrestrial monster. No, the horror of Perfect Blue is far more intimate than that. Perfect Blue is a nightmarish story told from the perspective of a woman losing her identity. A story about the creation surpassing the creator. We are oftentimes told that our actions define us. But what does that actually mean? At what point does the persona we are presenting to other people start to become part of our identity? At what point is the act no longer distinguishable from the real thing? Once again, the reason why Perfect Blue is only a honorable mention is because with Monster there's already a highly psychological, thought-provoking and demanding show on the list. But I nevertheless felt obligated to at the very least mention this movie. Okay then, this is the end for real now. Thank you for watching and goodbye.